Hello, and welcome to Speaking of Supply Chain, where we explore trends, current events, and innovations impacting the logistics and supply chain industries. I am your host, Ellen Wood. Today, I am joined by Marco Wagner and Marcel Reinhardt, and we are going to be talking about the options for asset financing in automation and logistics. And so, welcome, Marcel and Marco.
Thanks for having me
Thanks.
today.
Thanks, Ellen. Thank you.
So I'm really looking forward to our topic today. I'm sure that a lot of our listeners are interested in the financial aspects of supply chain and what options are available out there for them. But first, let's take a moment and talk a little bit personally. So my icebreaker question for today, what is the worst job you have ever had? Marco, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I did a couple of jobs in my previous life, obviously. I worked as a waiter, but maybe my worst one was working in a distribution center, loading and unloading trailers for an electronic company. And that's maybe why I'm ended up here talking about automation. Huh?
Exactly. Find a better way to do that job so I don't have to do it again. Marcel, what about you? Have you had a terrible job in your work history?
Well, if you ask me, because I have to say it's Miebach because it has been my first real job, so I have to go with that one. But I still like it. I'm here 11 years, so I'm still feel comfortable and happy to be here also on this podcast. No, but for sure I also had, let's say, the typical student jobs, or even as a teenager, carry out, you say, this paper jobs, magazines, this kind of things. But actually, to be fair, I didn't mind. So yeah, this is the job you had to do back then, and now I'm with Miebach now.
No, I agree. Yeah. Actually, one of my worst jobs was, so I used to be a restaurant manager before I went into marketing, and I loved restaurant management. That was not my worst job. My worst job was when I took a second position at a different restaurant as a server. And being a server, Marco, you had mentioned that you were a waiter in previous lives earlier in your career, and it is so hard to be a server and a waitress or a waiter. And that was by far the worst job I ever had. It was so difficult. I would rather manage the restaurant all day long.
Yeah, cannot agree more. Huh? Yeah.
Yes, I know the tipping culture is very different in Europe than it is in the Americas, but because of that, I am a very generous tipper now when we go out to eat and there is a server, because I know just how hard that job is. It is absolutely terrible. I would not wish it on my worst enemy. All right. So we are here today to talk about asset financing. And this is a unique way of acquiring some of these automation installations and equipment that's different from the typical way that companies go about trying to figure out how they're going to pay for upgrades into their facilities. So, Marco, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and DLL?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Marco Wagner, located in Germany, coming from the famous Ruhrgebiet area. And I'm working for DLL already for 23 years. DLL being a global asset finance company, and we are organized in business units according to the assets we are financing. And I'm actually responsible for a global team of intralogistics specialists focusing on all the equipment going into the warehouse and especially on the automation side. Huh? And Marcel, I think we are coming almost from the same region, huh?
Yeah, that's right. Both children of the Ruhrgebiet area where, let's say we say we're very direct in a sense. So that's why Marco and I, we also get along. Yeah, of course, then mostly in German language without the big accent, German accent. But yeah, you are actually 50. It's more or less 50 kilometers away. But also myself try to manage the global Miebach community. So from a small area, but going big and global, yeah, basically.
So why the partnership between the two companies? I mean, I can see it from my perspective, but tell our listeners a little bit more about why DLL would want to partner with Miebach. I mean, if you're just a banking and financing company, what's the appeal?
Yeah, good question, Ellen. Actually, there are two main reasons why we are partnering with Miebach. First of all, we want to support our customers and the customer's business case, automating the processes very early in the process when they start thinking about it. And obviously, Miebach is very early talking to the customers when they're thinking about automation. So the financing part comes also then together with the best technology they are looking for. Then we're helping customers making the business case. The second reason being all of our customers thinking about automation at the moment. Historically, we were financing manual forklifts, trucks and trailers. And with the change in the supply chain technologies, we are making this move with our customers. And customers looking for support, for advice, which we as a bank or as a leasing company cannot provide. That is why we are partnering with professionals like Marcel and his team to help our customers making the move from a manual operation to an automated operation.
And so, Marcel, on Miebach's side, how does this partnership add value?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, as you know, and as maybe the folks out there know, we basically design the warehouses of the future, the degree of automation. And then when it comes along the, let's say, evaluating different technical alternatives then to the business case, the usual traditional assumptions or mindset was, okay, listen, there's a 50 million invest on the table. We need to deliver the cash, and then it's a cash out solution. And basically the money is gone, and then maybe you need to wait, let's say something stupid, 5 to 7 years until this 50 million gets bid in because of the savings and the technique you're going to allow yourself in the warehouse or the production facility. It doesn't matter. And now with DLL, we have a different ball game, so to say, because there's another option, and Marco can explain this maybe also later, to make maybe a finance lease or an operating lease to basically fully variabilize the cost. And then this 50 million is spread across 5, 8, 10 years. And then basically we have immediate savings, and then it's a different ball game to our customers. And in the end, what us Miebach also enlightens us is to get the project executed. So it's a complete different scenario, different business games, talks, and this is why we definitely appreciate the support of DLL, and I have been also working already happily together last 2 years. Yeah.
I mean, financing is nothing new. Anyone who's bought a house or a car or made a large purchase of this type is familiar with financing. And Marco, you had said you're with DLL 23 years, so this has been around for a while in terms of asset financing. And you had also mentioned that you prefer to come in early in the process when we're starting to work with clients. So, is that the best time to come in? Is this radically new to some of the clients that you're working with or in sharing this information with? How is this not more common and more known?
No, that's a good question. So actually, financing is not new. You're absolutely spot on. DLL even is doing that more than 50 years. I'm only 23 years with DLL, but even before that, they did it. But financing was more, let's say, for commodity assets, for forklifts, trucks, trailers, cars, where it started in the industry. So, but an intralogistics warehouse and high bay system and fully automated stacker crane system is something very different. And therefore, you need to have different structures because there are different drivers for the customers, how to finance it. On a commodity asset, you normally have 60 months down to 20% residual or whatever it is. But in the intralogistics space, there are so many different drivers for the customers which drive then the decision how to finance it. It can be short term, it can be long term, it can be on off balance, it can be finance lease, as Marcel said, on operating lease. And the business case is so unique, so you need to understand the business case of the customer to come up with the best financial solutions. The money behind is a commodity, that's for sure. But the structure of the lease, this is something unique, and where DLL has developed capabilities and market knowledge over the last years doing that.
So it really does depend on the individual business, their needs for automation, and their needs for whatever that flexible financing terms are going to be based on those business needs. It's not a cookie cutter solution.
Spot on. Yeah, absolutely right.
And so what types of companies do benefit the most from this flexibility?
Yeah. Actually, I think there is not a standard customer type. So we are working with global multinationals who have different demands in terms, again, of balance sheet and then their cash flow and the budgets. but also small, medium-sized companies looking for automation at the moment. They have other drivers to finance with us. So it's not a customer who's not thinking about automation these days, because the common thing in the market is there are no labor available. So the labor shortage driving big, small, and medium customers into automation, and this demand getting bigger and bigger. And depending again on the needs of the clients, we are structuring the financing. But at the end of the day, every customer can benefit from it. Huh?
So, Marcel, do we have any customer stories that we can tell of, ways that we've brought DLL into the conversation and been able to realize some of these designs that Miebach is able to bring to the table and get something going and go live with the implementation that they otherwise may have not been able to accomplish?
Yeah, actually we do. We have a couple of them. Maybe I can also talk about a specific one, which would be maybe from the FMCG, so fast-moving consumer goods. But to comment on what Marco said, I fully agree that if you think about all the industries we have there, I think that the demand for automation is independent of the industry. It's just the technical alternative, which is different, right? So depending on the throughput, depending on the inventories levels, etc., pp. But it's basically applicable for all industries. To your point, to your question, Alan, we have a big global player on the market. We work together with Marco and team, and besides, let's take my 50 million to imagine how to finance this 50 million. I think it's for us, Miebach, it starts together with DLL, starts one step earlier, because we also have sometimes the problem, the chicken egg problem, then where a service provider, 3PL, is involved to say traditionally, let's say customer XYZ, which is specifically FMCG driven, but applies again for all other industries, that they say, okay, we usually want to outsource our operations, we want to outsource our material handling equipment, and then you have sometimes a chicken egg problem that they said, okay, we know the location is great, we know that's going to be our warehouse or production facility of the future, but then the 3PL says, okay, listen, hey, if you really should invest into this technique, we want to have the 15 years commitment on this plot and for this invest, right? And then maybe there's a real estate player saying, oh, we also want 15 years. So with this like deep coupling, basically operation, the technique and the plots from each other and have different players in it, and then DL jumps in for the automation, you basically, for the end customer view, you make yourself less dependent on it. And to come back to your question, so we did this for a big player, and they actually changed this, or are about to change this. So purely 3PL dependent in the past, always this dependency, and now with this option of DL, we have first of all the option to fund it, to be able to fully valorize the cost, which is a completely different business case. To my earlier point, to example, to wait for 7 years until the first savings kick in, or for the payback of 7 years, we now have basically savings from day one. Plus, we have another feature that they take basically the equipment which has been bought by DLL and lease it from DLL, which is a different kind of relationship, a different argumentation. Yeah.
So one other question that made me think of. So does this mean that when companies are looking at these automated solutions and they're leasing them essentially from DLL, that protects them against some obsolescence of the technology as time moves on? We're seeing that some of this automation is advancing at light speed. It's going so fast, it seems. Does this asset financing also give them obsolescence protection, in that if they need to adjust or change or renew some of those automation solutions, that they can do that more easily than a cash purchase?
Absolutely, Ellen. So there are various potential obsolescence. One is the technology obsolescence, that the technology will not be supported anymore by the supplier or the software. But also in the case of 3PL, maybe the 3PL loses his contract, or the contracts won't be extended. So they have equipment purchased, but they don't have the right customer for that anymore. So then also the equipment becomes obsolescence. And also maybe if talking about an end user, if he is changing his businesses or any other types of supply chain operations, so he may need to change equipment or add equipment, then in a leasing solution, it's much more flexible rather than buying it. If you bought something, it's yours and you need to deal with it if something changes. if it's on a lease, well, we can deal with it and we can help the customer changing it or adapting to the new requirements. Huh?
So what does this mean for companies in the near future? I mean, in the next, let's say 5, 10 years, or even the long-term future. I mean, right now interest rates are all over the place. They've been high for a little while. They're starting to come back down. But what does this mean for clients as they're making decisions today, but also as they're looking out into those planning horizons?
Yeah, actually, I wouldn't say necessarily interest rates are high. We are just used to very low interest rate over the last year. So,
This
so
is
in
true.
my age, I saw interest rates of 10, 15% in the past. So,
Mm-hmm.
so what is still the case is that bank funding or leasing is still cheaper than equity. And using your own equity, the return on investment, I guess, is less than using third party money, which is makes the business case much more attractive. So, and because of the simple demand, there is also not enough cash anymore in the companies. So there is fight and competition for budgets, but there is on the other hand so much demand to invest in automation, so that we strongly believe that together with Miebach, we can be a project enabler, helping the customers really to do the investment they need to do now. And the good thing with it is you're still securing the interest rate of today. So whoever knows what will happening with the interest rate 1, 2, 3 years from now. So as soon as the lease facility has been signed, the monthly costs are fixed for a term of 5, 6, 7 years. So there is no inflation on that. So we are fixing the leasing rates at the day when customers signing the agreement with us. So that protects customers also for inflation on cost during the entire term of the financing. So there are pros and cons. You're right, interest rates are a bit higher than we were used, but it's still very attractive if you compare it to equity, for example.
Yeah, we were pretty spoiled by those low interest rates for a few years.
Yeah,
So,
that's for sure.
Marcel, what do you see in terms of trends with industries? Is anything going to be changing industry wise? You had mentioned FMCG and, of course, logistic service providers. Are those the two biggest industries that utilize this capability, or are other industries going to be jumping on board and saying, yes, me too, me too?
Yeah, I think I highlighted or flashed it a little bit earlier. So I think, let's say, the demand for automation is for all industry the same, as in a sense that
Universal.
it's universal, exactly. So because the drivers are the same, as Marco spotted on, right? Labor shortage increase, so not only number of labor but also specialized labor, right? So this is another one which then also plays into account when I say we talk about automation. So you also need people to, let's say, in the best case, also to know to use the stuff, right, which is in the warehouse. As I said, industry-wise, I think that the technique alternatives are just different, and this is of course what we do in Miebach day by day, to based on throughput, based on inventory levels, and so on to determine what's the right one.
Right,
But I
what the
think
need is.
exactly what the need is, but the macroeconomic drivers are the same, which enforces automation 100%. And that's why I think this, I think when you would ask Marco for the future predictions of leasing or financing amount, I think Marco can confirm that you are talking about not single digit growth numbers, but more double digit. So that's the future.
Definitely, Marcel. This trend can only accelerate. As the market is accelerating, growing 11, 12% year over year on the equipment sale, I think also the demand for financing will accelerate. And as we figured out already, I think the need for flexibility will also accelerate because 3PL contracts getting shorter, the cycles and the predictability of the business getting shorter. So companies need more flexibility on one side, in terms of technology, so from a very static automation system to a more agile and maybe adaptable systems like AMR system, which you can scale up and scale down pretty easily. But also in terms of, again, financing, rather than using capex, which is static and you paid it and it's out of the door and it will not come back again, to more flexible solutions. So we see this flexibility need at every discussions we're having with our customers.
All right. So, in terms of the partnership and the joint value proposition between Miebach and DLL, what can our customers expect from you? What can our potential customers expect from you?
I can go first, Marco, and then you jump in right away. So basically, as you know, Alan, that we are supply chain consultancy, supply chain engineers, how we used to like to call us. That's double past. Anyhow, so this is a supply chain dimension. So to really determine the best intralogistics or the best material flows. So in a nutshell, the best cost per unit, cost per pallet, what that is. But then we're bringing another angle. It's another dimension to the business case, which is the financing element, right? And then, as I explained earlier, like basically you don't need to calculate two different business cases, and just basically, I wouldn't say a financial trick. It's not a trick. It's just a different view on the numbers. It's instead of a capex out, you basically create. And I have to say, you asked me for the joint value proposition. We work together, not necessarily in all projects from the start, because for some projects it doesn't make sense. We also have to be very fair that there are customers out there who always want to own the equipment, right? And if this is already clear, then we can still somehow finance it, and then later they do a finance lease and then have the equipment. But there are customers out there who prefer to take their own cash, right? So just to say that, my point is that of course, we can include Marco and team and talk about and this I also have to give Marco and the team. They have a very quick turnaround. So usually when we work together and the question comes, if this is now the 50 million and this is in country XYZ and based on the current interest rates and based on what the preference is of the customers, they usually have a, let's say, turnaround of, let's say, what is it, 24, 48 hours to come up with a quote, and which helps, of course, our customers. And that they don't need to wait, 4 weeks and say, no, I need to go to my own finance department and check this. So basically, we try to check all the boxes of the customer, say, oh, they could ask this question. Oh, wait a minute, we have already answered to this one question. So this is how we work together. And then, of course, it brings a huge value. And sometimes even customers are surprised as us, as known as the supply chainers, that we also have financing topics on our radar. Yeah, of course, with DLL.
That we've already anticipated that need.
Exactly.
Yeah, just to complement for that, and that was spot on, I guess. So yeah, the customer just can expect making their life easier. So we want to enable their projects and not leaving them alone on the consultancy side or on the financing side. So it's a 360 solution we are providing, which is tailored again to the business case of the customers, and not leaving the procurement manager alone with how we get paid for it or how we are paying for this. So it takes one burden off the shoulders of the procurement or warehouse manager, and enables us as a lease company also to helping our customers with questions they may have in-house, which we cannot answer. So it's a mutual partnership that Miebach's customers benefiting from payment solutions and investment solution, and our customers benefiting from the advice when customers thinking about automation.
Sure. Yeah. And I also wanted to point out for our listeners out there, just because, this podcast is put on by Miebach and we've got Marcel here, and there is a partnership between the two companies. Customers do not have to use Miebach to be able to benefit from the DLL financing options. You can go just to DLL and use that. Of course, Miebach wants your business as well, and if there is a need for it, Marco's going to point you in our direction. But it's not a requirement that you use Miebach to be able to access the financing from DLL.
Absolutely, yeah.
And just to complement Alan, if I may, if we have some time left.
Of course.
Just to give the folks also some numbers, right? We looked into actually our, let's say, into our concept design study. So the phase where we plan a warehouse and then say, so stick again with my example, this is the 50 million. And then looked around after 1 year and asked the customer, or sometimes we know it, right? Has the project been implemented? So has the warehouse been realized, right? Has the factory been realized? Yes or no? And of course, we don't know this to all the truth and to all the feedbacks. But if we ask our customers, what was the reason why you haven't implemented, right? Oftentimes it was the reason further, even that the customer said, okay, listen, the plan was really good, but the stakeholder changed. We put this somewhere in the cupboard somewhere. It's still a good concept, but the timing was not right. Or they said, then it's now exactly what Marco was saying. That is, the invest was too high, the payback time was too long. So, and if you would do this again, this is high level, we would assume that we would have 30 to 50% of the projects we have been designing for could have been implemented. So, of course, it's a lot, yeah, but hypothetically, based on the answers we get them from the customers, it's a pretty solid number, right? So, yeah, we could have even more automation already out there right now.
That's interesting because you know that these clients didn't come to us or to any design firm to ask for this design or to ask for this new facility and just to spend the money on this design project. They don't make a design project for no reason. They obviously have a need and a desire to see this through once they have a plan. And the fact that many of them are not able to realize these plans is very disappointing. So that makes me very glad that DLL and Marco are here to be able to offer them another option that would get them across that finish line.
100%. And also what I can say is that also internally, right, with Miebach, I think to all the Miebach folks who are listening to this podcast, I hope there are many, I think there's also nothing worse than plan, but nothing is executed, right? So, and the same, of course, the customers comes first, but this is also something where it's always nice to see, let's say, your baby fly, right? So if you plan something,
all that hard work for nothing.
Exactly.
So I know that Miebach is global. We have offices around the world, and DLL also has a very large footprint. Are there any of the areas that we service that are not able to ask, or they are not able to get the financing options through Miebach? Or I guess to Marco, where is this available to clients? Are there any geographies where you don't work?
Yeah, obviously we cannot service all the world. Unfortunately, we would love to, but we have our global footprint, which is 90% by coincidence the same footprint as Miebach has. So we are in Europe, in all Western European countries, and we have Poland, Hungary. In the Americas region, we are in Canada, US, Mexico, Brazil, and Chile. You see some of the flags behind me. And in Asia Pac, we are also in New Zealand, Australia, Korea, and Singapore. So actually, in these countries, we can support Miebach customers and our customers with intralogistics financing. In countries where we don't have a present, unfortunately, we cannot. Simple reason being, we need to avoid in this business tax and legal issues. If you do these things cross-border, the burden onto the customer investigating legal and tax issues are too high. So we say better a quick no in a country where we are not. But I guess 80% of the global economy we can cover. Huh?
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So where can our listeners reach out to you? On LinkedIn?
Absolutely. So I have a LinkedIn profile. DLL has a website, dllgroup.com. And more than happy to take contact with any customer who is interested in exploring opportunities. Of course, this is something which is available and for free. So our services are for free when we're getting the deal. So we are not charging any advisory fees. So, but yeah, happy to take any phone calls or emails. Everything is on LinkedIn. Huh?
Well, fantastic. I will make sure we have those links to your website and your LinkedIn profile in the podcast description. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much, Marco and Marcel, for joining us and sharing your insights on what I'm sure many of our listeners have come up against in their facility designs and plans and updates in the past. I hope our listeners have enjoyed the discussion as much as I did and found some useful information for their next project. So they have a way to get in touch with you now. If you have a suggestion for a topic or would like to be a guest on our show, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact me at podcast@Miebach anytime. As always, thank you for listening and tune in next time.
Thank you so much again for having me.